Good afternoon. We are Team 1 and we will be presenting the HTC Corporation in 2012. My name is Xenia and presenting with me would be Kenneth and Nathan. Our other group members are Donald, Kelly, and Ryan. Next slide. For our agenda today, we're going to go over the firm overview, the business challenge analysis, the analysis of the internal and external environments, our strategic recommendation, how to implement this recommendation, and our performance. Next slide. Beginning with history, HTC was founded in 1997 as it entered the wireless telecommunications equipment manufacturing industry. It first focused on notebooks and then switched to handheld computer-like devices. After years of success, it went public in 2002 in Taiwan. Years later, in 2006, Peter Cho took over. Following that, he introduced mobile devices under the HTC brand name, such as the HTC Touch. In the following years, HTC was named one of the 50 most innovative companies and also the global device manufacturer of the year. In early February 2012, it introduced the HTC One, and throughout history, HTC has produced many industry firsts. Next slide. The key industry firsts for HTC would begin with the first Microsoft pocket-sized PC, also the first color screen PDA to run on Windows CE platform. Also, together with Microsoft, it created the first Windows-based smartphone. And in 2008, HTC designed the first Android handheld device. For a full list of HTC's industry firsts, you can reference the appendix at the end of the presentation. Next slide. For HTC's core competencies, it focuses on innovation through collaboration, leading with breakthrough technologies such as the HTC Sense through Magic Labs, which are in-house product development stations, and also they offer a shorter product life cycle compared to the industry. Another thing that HTC focuses on is quality hardware. It was even praised by Bill Gates as the world's best hardware manufacturer, and also a high level of product customization which it offers to its consumers. Next slide. HTC's current strategy is to be a product differentiator. It uses a horizontal business strategy, and also it contracts its manufacturing to outside companies. All of HTC's products are highly customizable to consumers and mobile operators. It has shorter product life cycles than competitors, and recently it decided to streamline production with the One Series, its hero product. And also in all the products that HTC offers, they make sure that each user has a personal experience, and they do that by providing a unique user interface. Next slide. For the business challenge, HTC needs to figure out a way to pursue a sustainable differentiation strategy despite the disappointing financial performance in Q1 of 2012 and the increasing competition in the industry. If management decides to ignore this problem, then further financial loss of market share, and future layoffs will decrease the value of the HTC company to its shareholders. Next slide. Next, Nathan will introduce the internal environmental analysis.
All right, thank you very much, Xenia. My name is Nathan, and I'm going to do the internal environmental analysis, starting with our financial analysis. And as you can see here, this is a chart of our firm's operating efficiency. Since 2007, HTC has been experiencing decreasing operating margins as well as decreasing net margins. And this needs to be addressed if HTC wishes to remain competitive in the industry it is currently in. Next. And this is just a breakdown of some of HTC's financial ratios. As you can see, since 2007, HTC's debt ratio has increased to 59%, while at the same time its current ratio has decreased to 1.24. If this trend continues, it could be problematic for HTC, as it may have a hard time paying off its future debt obligations. Its operating performance ratios are stable and doing well there, and so I just want to jump down to profitability analysis. And really, I just want to focus on the firm's return on equity. It's at 70% for 2011, which is tremendous, and it's a trend that we wish to capitalize on and improve on moving forward. Next slide, please. And then this is just how HTC matches up against the competitors in the industry. As you'll notice that HTC's overall market share is a lot lower than companies like Apple, RIM, or Samsung, but this does not really affect its profitability ratios, especially its return on asset sales and return on equity. And it's interesting to note that its return on equity and return on assets are actually better than those of Apple and Samsung. Next slide, please. And this is the value chain. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just want to point out that HTC's R&D has led the way for it with many, as Xenia said, many groundbreaking technological developments, and they won many awards for their R&D. And their operations is really what sets them apart and adds value to HTC's product. As Bill Gates said, they are known for their hardware, and this is due to their CEO's operating and quality control. He always wants to have the best quality product available, and so if an engineer comes in with a product design that he doesn't think lives up to HTC's standard, then he will send him back to the drawing board because quality is most important to HTC. Next slide, please. And I was going to go over some strengths and weaknesses of HTC. HTC's strengths is its cutting-edge R&D program. As I previously stated, they have an exemplary R&D, which has won many awards for them. And then another strength of theirs is their international exposure. They are prevalent in both the Asian and European markets, and they hope to build on that moving forward. A couple weaknesses of HTC is its inconsistent marketing strategy coupled with its weak brand awareness. You could be in Turkey, other European countries, you could be in Asia, and if you saw an HTC ad from Turkey versus one from China, you would have no clue that it was the same product just because they lack congruency in their marketing strategy and their brand awareness isn't that prevalent. And we're going to move now to the STEEP analysis, which is an external environmental analysis, of course. And we want to look at the social trends that we've noticed, and that is the high demand for constant interconnectivity, as well as mobile, the increased mobility of our consumers. And we also want to hone in on the ecological trends going on, which is there is an increased emphasis on environmental sustainability and a prevalent amount of, or growing amount of green technology introduced into our industry. Next slide. This is the Porter's 5 forces. I like to focus on the threat of new entrants. The threat of new entrants for our industry is very low due to the large capital requirements that is necessary, as well as already a highly saturated market filled with established brands. And the bargaining power suppliers for our industry is medium. This is due to the limited operating suppliers that are out there. There's only about 4 or 5 main operating suppliers that you can choose from, and only 3 of those that you would really recommend using. And however, the ease of access to the raw materials made or needed for the hardware is readily available. Therefore, we felt that the overall threat was medium. Next slide, please. And we're just going to go over the opportunities and threats. 2 opportunities that we want to focus on is the increased demand for green technology. We believe that this is an opportunity that could be exploited and could be very profitable moving forward. And also, developing our own operating system. As I previously mentioned, there's only a few prevalent operating systems out there, and we believe that we could steal a lot of market share from competitors by developing our own operating system. And then the threat I want to focus on is the increased litigation surrounding intellectual property. As we saw with HTC and Apple earlier on, it is a real threat, and so we just have to really make sure that we are covering our bases legally when developing and issuing any new patents or technology. Next slide. Now I'm going to hand it over to Kenneth, who's going to go over the recommendations and implementation.
All right, thank you, Nathan. So as mentioned just now, we're going to go over the recommendation and implementation part of our analysis. Next slide, please. So after doing our internal and external analysis and the research that we've done through that, we've come up with our best 3 options in order to try and address the business challenge put forth for HTC. So our first option is to design and implement our own operating system. So clearly, without having our own proprietary software, we have to go out and license it from other companies, which can be expensive. So there's the option of designing and implementing our own. Second option then would be further invest in the tablet market. This is an area where we have struggled, but there is the opportunity to, with our great R&D and product innovation, try and regain some market share there and invest further, gaining some market share and revenue. Then there's option 3, which is going to be expand our R&D into green technologies, and we will explain on this further in the next slide. So here's just a matrix of our options and then pros and cons for each of them. Starting with the first option of creating and implementing our own operating system, pros would definitely be by having our own operating system, we don't have to license it from others, so we have our own ownership of our proprietary software, and if we wanted to, we patent it, we could have our legal power through our copyright and potentially make revenue from selling it to other people if we chose to do that. Plus we'd have a better compatibility with our phones, which is where other operating systems have struggled with our level of customization so far. Cons, though, it is highly capital intensive. It's going to require great capital expenditure in order to invest more in our R&D and equipment in order to create our own operating software, as well as it's very time intensive. It'll take some time, and if it doesn't work out, then we have to start from scratch again, focusing on the all or nothing part of that. Then we're going to go down to further investing in the tablet market. The pros there is we could obviously increase our product mix and deepen this value proposition for our customer where we struggled before, and increase our customer base, hopefully gaining more market share where we've lacked before and increasing our revenue through that. But there are cons, however. First, it's a very highly competitive sector of the industry. Apple, with 80% of this market share, would be tough to wrestle from them, especially with their brand loyalty. And because of our previously failed tablet endeavors, it'd be hard for us to gain our own customer acceptance knowing that we've had failures before. And lastly, we have our expand R&D into green technologies, such as potentially creating solar power technology with our phones, something of that nature. It would be, and the pros for this, obviously, it would be groundbreaking. Nobody in the industry has something like this right now, so it would be that first mover advantage, being the first to the market, and thus we'd be able to create a competitive advantage by capitalizing on the ecological trends that were shown this steep, as well as the mobility of consumers that were shown this steep, as well as the social trend. And then, of course, we have cons as well, so it could be, once we have it out there, other competitors could try and imitate it, which would decrease our competitive advantage, as well as by putting this technology on there, you'd increase the fragility of the product itself. Next slide, please. So out of these 3 options, we think the one that is going to address the business challenge as much as possible, and hence increase our market share, increase our product differentiation, create the best competitive advantage for us at the lowest cost and the lowest risk, is going to be to use our strength of innovative R&D and our great R&D departments such as Magic Labs to capitalize on this growing long-term social and ecological trends that we saw in the steep of consumer mobility, the increased importance of being eco-friendly, and exploit the opportunities as this area of the market with green technology by introducing the industry's first solar-powered smartphone. Next slide, please. So just based on some research to substantiate this recommendation, as you can see here, just the key takeaways. There's a record high 71% of Americans that consider the environment when they are purchasing a product. And this is up since 2008, so it shows that it is an increasing trend that we could take advantage of in order to gain some market share and have a good customer base. And then the other one, you can read this further, but the other key important one is that almost 3/4 of consumers wish companies would do a better job helping them understand environmental terms, which also leaves an opportunity for us there not only to sell our environmentally products to these environmentally conscious consumers, but as well to educate them about our value proposition and why it is such an important issue, creating, like I've mentioned previously in other slides, a deeper value proposition for a customer that could be long-term and very competitive, create a great competitive advantage. Next slide, please. So here's our implementation plan of how we go about it. First, we have to use our Magic Labs to actually introduce and create this solar power technology in a small compact form. Then we're going to integrate this solar power technology actually into the mobile device itself, figuring out how this can play as a part of our mobile devices. We would use the existing 1 Series design as the model, sort of trying to cut costs as much as, reduce costs and expenses as much as possible. And then from there, we're going to patent the technology so that other companies cannot come in and infringe on this, sort of saving us from legal disputes that would happen immediately. And then once all that is said and done, we'd be able to produce the HTC One Eco, which would be the final end product. And then we'd market it, obviously, in order to create demand for it as the HTC One Green option, in a way to drive demand for it, making sure that when the product comes out that people are going to buy it, and show customers about the product value and how it is really eco-friendly, instilling that need for this product in them. Next slide, please. And then from there, through our implementation plan, you can see our timeline. It's going to take about 1 to 2 months of actually introducing this technology through Magic Labs and all of that, as well as 4 months right after that to actually integrate it into a mobile device. This is going to be where our net working capital comes into play of 500 billion new Taiwanese dollars, because they are headquartered and they have their IPO in Taiwan. And then between the 4 and 5 months here, concurrently, we're going to apply for a patent, as well as begin production of the HTC One Eco. This is where capital expenditures, this is where the net working capital is, the 7 billion is the net working capital needed to just get raw materials and everything that we're going to need material-wise to produce this product. And then in the last 2 months of this 5-month production phase, that is when we're going to begin our marketing campaign. So you can see overall it's a time of 10 to 11 months, and the total cost is going to be 7.5 billion new Taiwanese dollars. Next slide, please. So obviously we have some risks here, and to name a few of them, we have imitation of competitors, which I mentioned before. It is going to be imitable, but we're going to mitigate this risk and mitigate the risk of reverse engineering by applying for a patent for this product and keeping it proprietary. Then there could be a lack of acceptance, so obviously if our sales don't grow and consumers don't pick this up, this could turn out to be an unprofitable project because we're not going to get enough sales to cover our expenses. As well as we have if there is a higher projected raw materials cost, which would potentially affect the profitability of this, causing us to further exaggerate our debt to equity ratio if we would have to fund this project through excessive debt financing. Next slide, please. So here, this is our pro forma and the assumptions and the revenue that we've come up with based on the assumptions you can see here. An 8% unit sales growth rate, our discount rate, all of that. So as you can see here, we have our incremental revenues, which would be added to our top line revenue over the first 5 years of the project. And as you can see here, we have 7.5 billion new Taiwanese dollars in the first year, which, as mentioned, what the cost of the project would be before, the 7.5 billion. We are actually covering that in our incremental revenues the first year, sort of showing that it could break even in the first year. But we are going to end up financing this through short-term and long-term debt, just so that we get as much free cash flow out of this as possible over the timeline of the project. So as you see here, it will sell at a 15% premium, and the sales grow at 5% every year as consumers pick up the demand for the product and want this product more and more through our marketing campaigns. And then just as part of the calculation, our operating expenses and our COGS, which include our marketing expenses that we were talking about before, will just be a percentage of our total revenues that we gain throughout the course of the project. Next slide, please. So then we just did a pro forma to show how these incremental cash flows are going to flow down to the bottom line from year 1 to year 5, which is going to factor into our net present value. And as you see, the net present value here of the project is 2.97 billion new Taiwanese dollars, which shows that it is at this internal rate of return and what we projected as our unit sales growth rate, that it will be a profitable project even after this capital expenditure in the first year of 7.5 billion new Taiwanese dollars. And then you can just see throughout the years that our EBIT actually increases as well, substantially, showing the profitability of this project beyond just the net present value, discount flows, valuation. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, we have a sensitivity analysis showing that based on our unit sales growth rate, which is another risk factor for this that we mentioned before, playing into that net present value valuation, it is an important risk driver. So based on, we did a sensitivity analysis based on different unit sales growth rates. And as you can see at the 8% we were using, that's where we have our profitability. But anything above 4.05%, you can see that the net present value is either going to be 0 or positive, substantiating a reason for you to pick this project up. But anything below that, a 4.05%, would cause the project to be unprofitable. However, based on the sociological and ecological trends that we've seen, we expect the unit sales growth rate to meet that mark. But then, and then just lastly, you can see if it is over 8%, our NPV will grow exponentially.